Hey there, it's Chris, and first of all, I want to say a huge thank you for your purchase. It really does mean a lot, and I hope you enjoy creating lovely florals with these flower tools. I'm going to start at the beginning by showing you exactly how to actually import everything into Procreate. So you have tapped on the link to download your zip file, and it has come into your files into your downloads most likely if that's where you've saved it. So what you're going to do is you're going to see a zip file here and it'll say flower tools zip. Just simply tap on it and it will automatically unzip for you and it will create a new folder. So maybe you have to wait a few seconds for that. Tap that open. There should be a few things in here. You have the PNGs, you have the brushes and the canvases. So we're going to start by opening up the brushes. You'll see there's the flower grids and the flower tools. So I'm just going to start by tapping on the tools and automatically it will import for me into Procreate. So if I just created a new canvas, open that up, and we can see at the top here it says flower tools. Of course I have a duplicate because I've already have them on my computer here, but they'll just automatically come in here. And there's also another way you can do it if you feel more comfortable. If you want to be in the Procreate app, open a new canvas, go to the brushes, go to this plus sign at the top here, go to import, and then you'll want to just again navigate to that downloads folder and then to the folder again, to your brushes, and click on that brush set there and it'll do the same thing. So whatever way you feel is better for you to work with. I'm just going to delete this as I already have a few of them here. All right, so again, I'm going to go and grab the flower grid builder and just by hitting that plus sign, import, and the grid builder brush set here. So there we have our flower grids. Okay, great. So now that we have everything here, I'm going to actually go back to my gallery and import the canvas that I'd like to use. So I'm going to say, while I'm in the gallery, I can't be in a canvas when I do this, so I would want to be in the gallery in Procreate. Say import, again, go back. I'm going to grab these canvases and I'm going to grab the canvas here. Normally it won't have that picture there. It'll be blank for you. And I'm just going to open that up. And it will import the canvas. So on this canvas, you can see there's a few effects and stuff that will really emphasize and create another dimension to our watercolor. And you get that watercolor texture. And then you have a layer that says draw here. So I guess that's pretty self-explanatory. So we will start here and you can have this layer locked too, which I highly recommend. So before I bring in my grids, I'm actually going to bring up a reference photo. You don't have to, but I'm just going to use this as some inspiration. So you can go do that by hitting the wrench sign, going over to canvas, going over to reference, tapping on that, and then you can go in and bring in an image. So I've already have an image, so I'm just going to bring that up. Okay, there it is. So I have this little Cosmo flower or Cosmea, depending on how you like to say it. So I'm just going to use that just as a little inspiration for some of my petals and stuff like that. Next, I'm going to go grab a shape from the flower grid builder. So I'm going to tap on that. And you can see here we have cup, and it comes in concave and convex in all the different degrees. And a bell, same thing, saucer, and trumpet. So those are sort of the main shapes of a lot of flowers. This one I can see it's going to be maybe about like a saucer. So again, I'm just using this as reference. So I'm actually kind of thinking that's a 45 degree. Let's give that a try. So you can have this in whatever color you want. I'm just going to have it on a gray. Right now I have it 100%. Let's see how that does. Great, wonderful. So I'm just going to use my arrow to adjust that, move that up. And of course, this flower actually is quite straight up and down, but you can adjust this as well. And you can adjust it with freeform to change it a little bit as well if you wish. Or distort or any of the other tools to create the exact angle that you wish. And most importantly, I'm going to go in and create a new layer so that I can manipulate the next stamp by itself and not affect the other one. Otherwise I'd have to place it perfectly and I'm not sure I can do that. So let's go in and grab another brush, and because I use saucer concave 45 degrees, I'm going to use the opposite. So I'm going to use saucer convex negative 45 degrees as my as this part of the flower. So I'm just going to have it at about 50%. I'm going to tap, and then I'm going to use this shape and center it there, and that's going to be, and I'm going to size it. I'm going to have it on uniform here, just that about like that. Again, you can just manipulate it however you want. But then I know exactly where that is. I'm going to turn off these effects for you so you can see this a little bit clearer, because I think that's probably a little bit easier. So you can see those guides are really helpful to make sure we have it just so. So that really helps with figuring out the perspective and where things go, and especially when we start placing our petals. So I'm going to go and just merge these two together because I'm pretty happy with where those are at. And that can be our layer there. So I can click on the N and just maybe make that opacity just a little bit less. I still want you to be able to see it. And then I'm going to hit the plus sign and draw over top. So I'm going to just go and use this black. And then I'm going to go to the flower tools, and here you have a pretty big selection of all the tools you're going to need to make all these lovely little flowers. So we're going to start today with our sketch ink, my favorite one for my line work. And you can see there's lots of stuff for sketching, and then of course for watercolor. And these are all the typical things I use to make my flowers. So I'm just going to start with the favorite sketch. And let's start creating this flower. So we'll see how easy it is to do this in perspective, because I'm not going to have to think of all these leaves or petals in the foreground, which can be a little tricky sometimes. So again, just using this as an inspiration, I'm just going to go and create this little petal, and I'm going to make some decisions on where things are going to overlap. This one's going to overlap here. Bring that up about here. And this guy is going to be around here. Again, this is just meant to be loose right now. We'll have that little gap because that's kind of nice, just to make it a little bit interesting. And bring that over there. It's coming in. Okay, so that's pretty easy to do. That's pretty straightforward. And next I'm going to bring in this petal here. So you can see where it's grayed out. I know that that's the part, the underside, that we can see. So that makes it a lot easier for me to figure this out. So I can just draw this petal, this part here, just like that, right? Something like that. And then we know that this is coming up underneath here. See that side edge? So that's just going to be like that. So that makes sense. And then we know that these lines are going to come in here because we can see that, right, drawn already for us. So that's nice. Actually, I'm going to make this a little bit longer. Again, you just keep, I like to always do a nice rough sketch before I commit to anything. It just helps me keep things loose, I think. And that comes in there. And then again with this petal here, we're going to have that scoop, kind of comes there. Very messy. Let's just erase that so you can see. And again, these lines already, we see that they're coming in there. Now these lines obviously are meant to be just so you understand the angles of it, not exactly where you're going to place all your petals, because obviously all flowers are going to have different number of petals and whatnot, but at least you know the angle of where things should be coming in, so you can use that as a helpful guide. Okay, and then let's just have this in here. We know this is here. Great. Wonderful. So if we turn off our guide, we can see we have a pretty good flower in perspective. Again, it's not supposed to be exactly the same as this, but we're just using that as some loose inspiration. Okay, so now that we have a very rough sketch ready to go, I'm going to actually just turn that down by touching the end and turning down my opacity a little bit, just so we can go over top. So I'm going to create a new layer by hitting the plus sign. My pen is at about 40%, so I'm just going to go and trace over this, but make this a little bit nicer. So I'm going to just actually concentrate a little bit on the center. Again, this is just going to be interpretive. This isn't an exact, representation. So just have a little fun with it. Just get these little nubbly guys so you can kind of see how they go around. Just using a lot of little C shapes just to make these little bits around here. Kind of getting the idea. It just looks like a bunch of scribbles at the moment, but it'll come together. That's the fun part about painting and drawing. It just takes a while before you can really see it come together, and I like that. A little mystery about it. Alright, so I'm just going to make these sort of like that. Bring in this. Let's have a look at what this is like. Actually, this one's coming out like this. Makes more sense. Okay, so I think that looks a little neater, of course. makes a big difference. All right, so then I'm gonna just bring in some of these lines, and how I'm gonna do that is just by kind of seeing where the folds go, or naturally where my lines kind of meet that, and just again using the pressure of my pen, just in and out to create these lines a little bit more at the end, maybe creating those little folds. Again, this is sort of left to interpretation a little bit here, so be creative and just have fun. But again, I wouldn't keep them too consistent, just sort of a little bit like little fabric folds almost. Okay. I think that's good. Not sure we really need this reference anymore, so that can go away. All right, so there we have our flower. It's in a nice perspective. We can figure out that our little stem would be about here. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward how you would use the guides just to create that shape. We can do a few other ones. I'll just show you really quickly. We can go in, hit that plus sign, and go to our flower grid builder. And look at this bell maybe. Let's say, let's just give it 30 degrees, and then we're going to go back in and say it has a center. Not every flower has a center that sticks up, but that's a little, obviously this, if you just wanted to use it on its own, it's pretty straightforward. But if you wanted to go in again, you'll want to use the opposite, so concave, and then the convex would be -30, and we would just make that a little bit smaller, and then you can just position that in there so it fits, and then we can bring it up. Sorry, just bring on uniform first, and so you can see how that would work. So I use this to create this flower. I'll just import it, pop that in there. Okay, so you can see how I use this to create this shape. And so if we delete it, you can see you can create that using those shapes. So that really helped me with this one because yeah, it's a little bit confusing, especially when you have such a large center like that. Just try to get everything going the right direction. Here's another one I used. Let's see. We can use these softer shapes in the other direction. So let's use the 15. You can see that. I'm going to turn off these effects again. We'll use the 15 and the -15, and I'm going to use, actually, I'm going to use the same thing again. So we're going to have this type of flower, like a daisy, that type flower, or it goes the opposite way. And you can see how that would be really simple to do as well. So again, I have another example. I'll bring that in for you. One sec. Okay, and so you can see I will merge these together. And this one, of course, I angled it and turned it here to bring that in. And I also can do this freeform and change that a touch too, depending on how you'd like your petals. So you can see that made that really simple as well. So hopefully that gives you a few ideas of how to use these brushes and just to really help you with perspective and just jumpstart your drawing right away. So let's go back to our flower. Just gonna say goodbye to these. Let's go back to our flower and play with some of the paints. So I'm just gonna hit that plus sign underneath my sketch, and then I'm gonna go and grab a nice fill one is just the watercolor fill. It's a pretty solid fill, and I'll show you one way of doing it. You can do a few, of course there's a million different ways you can do this. You can go in and have this type of look. So I'm gonna actually go into my canvas here. I'm gonna turn off some of these extra paint effects so we can see it a little bit more and you can see how it'll change after. With this brush, you know, you can have a nice scratchy edge to it. You can have, again, a little bit more of a solid fill and a nice texture to it. That's actually the brush, not the canvas. And all sorts of things. But for right now, I'm going to show you this one. This is a nice washy fill. And I'm going to use this and use my favorite thing, clipping masks. If you watch any of my tutorials, you know I love a good clipping mask. And I'm going to use this for these flowers and for these petals. So let's start. I'm gonna start with this lovely pink color because I love pink and I love pink flowers. So we're gonna start with that. I'm just gonna color in pretty straightforward, really. We're just gonna color this in. I'm gonna keep my brush down the entire time. That is key to having a consistent look Not going to worry too much about if I go outside the lines or anything. Because of course, if you didn't and you went like this, you can get a line, which you might want, but in this case, I kind of want it to look fairly solid. So in my brain, I'm kind of painting how I actually paint in real life with watercolors. Depending on what technique you're using, normally what I do is I paint a petal, but I don't paint the same one like beside it at the same go while it's wet because I don't want them to bleed. So I kind of think about that in the same way with my layers. So I'm pretending that I'm just doing this one wash right now. So I'm going to go and pick a layer, or pick a petal rather, that is not beside it, so it wouldn't get wet and bleed into each other. You can leave a little bit of white spots if you want, just kind of have that sort of a little bit streaky feel, which I think is nice. If you make a mistake, you can always erase it depending on what edges you want. In this case, that edge won't matter too much. Even here, I'll do this, because that won't touch. And here. Again, leaving little bits of white, it's like the paper didn't really get wet there. That's fine. Okay, and then on another layer, I'm going to do the other petals. The reason I do this in this case is because when I'm going to use clipping masks, it's going to create sort of that effect, like look like I've painted them all individually. So that's what I'm going for. Because otherwise, if I use the clipping mask, it's going to bleed over to the one beside. Or it's actually, if you're really good, maybe you can do it. But I have trouble keeping my paint from spilling over. But so just get this all colored in. I might need one more layer just to do these outside bits. Oops, that actually is a hole there, a gape, so at about 15% now. Not being the neatest today, that's okay. Okay, then one more layer, and I'm going to get these outside petals. Okay. Just doing it a little bit quick today. Okay, so if we turn off our line layer, it'll look like that, which is fine. But actually, we can just turn this down just a little bit, so it's not too aggressive in the way at the moment. Let's just color in that center. So a new layer. I'm going to grab this yellow and just sort of fill that in. Okay, so after that, we can go and turn that layer off for a minute just so we can see what's going on. So I'm going to play with these petals right now. So like I said, I'm going to add a new layer, tap on it, and hit clipping mask. So then I'm going to go and grab, let's say this sort of, let's do this pink color, darker pink, and I'm going to grab this, I like these watercolor wet edge soft, and you can see that it's going to give you sort of this paint, and then this one's kind of cool because you keep painting over it and it goes wet on wet and it has some fun there. So you can really create some nice watercolor effects with this. and just really get in there. Now if you want this to be a little softer, you could use the soft bloom. It's really nice for edges. So if you want to come in there and just give that dried look, that it's, you know, all the paint's pooled a little bit more. It's a nice way to do it. Like that. Again, they're pretty sensitive to your pen, which is nice. And then I can go and create another clipping mask and go and grab one of these splotches too, which I like doing because I think that makes it give it a nice effect, and you can turn them and change them and do whatever you want with that too, and of course erase them too, because if they've come over here we may not want that. And you can play with the color modes as well and see what works best for you. Multiply is nice, color burn or linear burn's nice. Sometimes, it depends what it is, sometimes soft light works nicely as well. Let's do a linear burn right now, and I'm going to bring the opacity down just a touch. Maybe like that. Gives it a little interest. Just going to change my color a little bit. So we can play with these wet edges and just sort of, I don't know, create some paint effects. All right, so let's go around and do the other petals as well. So we have these ones. I'm just gonna play a little bit. Don't want it too dark. And you can come in and add on these edges too. Okay, let's move on to the next one. I'm just gonna hit the plus sign, hit the layer, tap on clipping mask, and just carry on with this brush. Just being a bit irregular about it. Keeping it darker in the center, as you can see. All right, that's good. And then lastly, these guys, these little bits at the end, I'm going to make sure that I have that lighter edge because I like the contrast between the dark and the light, so we can really tell where one begins and one ends, but I'm going to get underneath here. You can see how that works. Oops, love that. Okay, great. All right, so I'm gonna duplicate this, and I'm gonna merge that together just so it's a little bit more solid. I want that to be on top. I'm gonna hit the plus sign, clipping mask, and use this lighter color. Over top, and darker color under here. Build that up. Really sitting that in there. Now I think this is a good place for some splatter. These will be good, so then we don't have to draw those. I might come in and actually do some more detail with that. But we can of course go and make some more splotches and whatnot. So I'm gonna go to this layer and I'm gonna bring in maybe, let's see what happens with this yellow. I'm gonna grab maybe this guy and let's just have that in there. I'm gonna play with the color mode. Maybe multiply. I'm just bringing that down. Hopefully you can see this. I'm just gonna create a little bit more variation. I'm gonna create another layer. Actually, I'm gonna make this a little bit more green. Let's do these. Oops, get a little bigger. Maybe I'll bring it on top and see what happens. Changes it. Change it to multiply. Yeah. I don't know, it's just all about playing around. Maybe again I'll bring it underneath. Don't want that to be too orange. Kind of want that layered look. Model-y look a little bit. While we're here, we can add another layer, or I can go on the same layer if I wanted. Let's go for whites for a minute. Maybe we'll just do some little splashies, little splatter. Oops, that's a bit much. Just varying the sizes, varying the ones that I pick. Maybe making them some of the dark color too. Just kind of having fun with that. All right. And then I'm going to go back in here, same thing. Let's add some little splashes here and there. Again with some white too, or lighter colors. Good. Bringing in some more splotches. Gonna kind of like that greeny color. Let's see. Let's do this guy. Maybe like that. Again, make it multiply. Maybe bring it underneath the bottom here. Good stuff. And maybe one more just to balance it out. So maybe I'll change the color on this one. Actually, I'm going to create a new layer. Do it like that. Yeah, that's good. And let's just make that multiply. Adjust the opacity maybe a touch. Okay, so again, we're creating some nice texture, and you can go in and do more detail as your heart's content, of course. You might want to come in with the sketch and just create a new layer on the very top and go in and start doing little bits of details to really just make that, depends again what your look is. If you want it more flat or more dimensional, you can come in and have that sketch layer happening on top, which would look neat too. Also, another thing that I like to do sometimes is go on top of that sketch layer, create a clipping mask, I know, grab that pink and make it the similar color, which you might want to do that, and then we can change the color of, just go by going over here, changing the color of the center too. Maybe we'll make that darker, kind of like that. I'm just coloring over top, and that might be interesting, kind of a different look. Depends on what you want to do, or again, we can just have that more just a watercolor look and carry on with some more details just to sort of finish this up. which I think is nice too, with just a little bit of really focus on the center. And you can come in with your nice lines and whatnot and maybe do a little bit of really detail work. I like this pen for that too, because you might have that. Just a little bit more delicate than the line work we did before. Just sort of soft veining. You can use the side of your brush, just sort of do a little shading. Of course, you can do this with any of the paints too, not just with the line brush. You could come in and do this with, would look nice maybe with this, what am I looking, the tapered round. You can bring that in and give this nice look too. And of course you can smudge it, and I would suggest using one of the brushes for your smudger. Maybe the soft bloom would be nice. You can come in and soften it if you want that, more of that kind of look. These folds, I should probably make this more noticeable. Just smudge one of the edges. Keep one hard, keep one soft. That'll work too. So that could be nice to have these sorts of details here. Just depends. And I would do that under here too. Just bringing those in just to kind of, you can see the underside of those veinings and that kind of, just so you can see the underside of the veins, and again just really focusing on just showing the eye the direction of where things are going. Okay, and lastly you can play around a little bit more with the canvas, so let's just show you that real quick. Gonna go in here and you can see all these extra paint effects, so you can turn them on and that really changes the look quite a bit. And you can really, well, you can have all or one or two, and you can just go, I'm just gonna unlock this, and you can move them around too, because depending on where, you know, your highlights or whatever are, you might want to change that. Just make sure the edges overlap your picture, otherwise it might look kind of funny. You know, we can just play around with this. Oops, let's turn that back on. And yeah, just see how that really changes the look if you want a little bit more grungy looking, which I think is kind of fun. So yeah, hope that helps you. And yeah, like I said, if you don't want that on, you want it a little bit more, a little less intense, then that's great too. All right, well, I hope that gives you a good idea of some of the possibilities and maybe a different technique than you might not have thought of using the clipping masks and whatnot. Again, it's certainly not the only way to do it by any means, but just a little technique I thought I would show you. So I hope you enjoy all these brushes and find them really useful. I certainly do. I think that'll really jumpstart your ability to draw flowers or all sorts of things that are in this type of shape, that just really to get that perspective nailed down and just jump to it and get to painting. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your love and support. It does mean so much to me, truly. And I hope you really enjoy these, and I can't wait to see what you create. Take care, guys.